just have two schemed up drives where you can, empty the bag on this other look rather than just kind of beating your head against the wall with a look at a team that's not working.
Welcome back to the ANF Podcast, where we cover Iowa sports.
Today we're going to do a preview of the Northwestern Iowa game that's going to be played at Wrigley Field this weekend. It's a quick recap of what we just saw. We got the one result we needed.
Yep.
Wisconsin lost at home to Ohio State. It was a 14.5-point line. It was an outcome we thought was going to happen. Wisconsin actually made it a pretty close game.
Yep.
So as poor as we felt for about 10 days now, Iowa is now back in control of its destiny.
Yep, you're in a three-way tie with Minnesota, Iowa, and Wisconsin at the top of the Big Ten West. And oddly enough, actually Northwestern, of all teams, has an inside track to make their own run at the title. So now you're in the last 4 weeks of the season. If you had told Iowa fans before the season started, hey, you're going to come after the bye, and you're essentially going to control your own destiny. You technically don't at the moment because Minnesota has to play at Ohio State.
That's going to be a 21-point line.
If they win that game, they control their own destiny if they go clean. 90% of the time, Minnesota's not going to go into the horseshoe and win that game. So at this moment, Iowa does control its own destiny in, our eyes and, anyone with a sense of what that game's outcome is going to be.
With the teams you have left too,
Right.
Northwestern game at Wrigley, it's likely going to be at least 70% Iowa fans. That's what we probably predicted out to be. At home against a Rutgers team, good defense, but we should be able to put clamps on that offense. They don't really have a passing game.
Yeah.
Illinois obviously had their ups and downs. I still think they're really struggling on offense. They've had problems with their defense.
Yeah.
Your only game you're probably going to be dogs in is at Nebraska, and that line could actually get pretty large.
Right.
It could get up to 6 points if I had to guess.
It's really just, it's a Big Ten/Big Ten West ending of your season.
Yeah.
You're playing four offenses that are going to struggle against your defense.
Yep.
And you're going to play four defenses that your offense are going to have a hard time moving the ball against.
Yep.
It's going to be a bounces game. It's going to be a explosive play game. It's going to be a turnover margin game. All four games will be. Just like we just watched against Wisconsin and Minnesota, we're about to watch that four more times in the same scenarios and the same type of game flow.
That's what we've reiterated since Cade got hurt.
Right.
Is now you have entered the bounces part of the season.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we anticipate from this Northwestern game. They've started to play some pretty good football. They just beat a team that people think pretty highly of in Maryland. Maryland lost the week prior to Illinois.
Mm-hmm.
I've never really been that high on Maryland, and watching this game back, a lot of the same things that have plagued them for a long time. They're a really poor tackling team.
Right.
They're not very well disciplined in the back end. Northwestern was able to take advantage of that with their passing game. I don't think they're going to have the same success or even similar or even like success against our passing defense, but they're building confidence.
Mm-hmm.
And a team that's going to come out and have any ability to move the ball, any ability to stay on schedule is going to give us problems because we are not executing at all on offense.
Right. And it really, I think this game's going to play out a lot like Nebraska, Northwestern. 2 weeks ago, it was 17-9. It's a really low-scoring game. Both teams were around 200 total yards of offense. This portion of the season is November football. If you ever hear Ferentz talk about his kind of idea of the program, it's playing our best football in November. And we've obviously talked in length about how we've eliminated the quarterback position, the receiver position from our team and our recruiting. Essentially, our focus of our program is because we are a November team in Kirk's eyes. And when it gets to 40 degrees, when it gets windy, when the ball is harder to catch, harder to throw, harder to hang on to, our style should reign supreme. And we're also making choices on a week-to-week basis about how we practice and how we focus on certain things on a week-to-week basis for just preparing for games. And Iowa, more than any other team, focuses on fundamentals. And you're trying to have that really
reign
supreme in November, because that individual work you do on a week-to-week basis and the amount of hours you put into locking out, tackling, blocking, your steps, all those small details, by November, especially post a bye, that's supposed to come to fruition. And that's what Kirk wants to see in this last 4 weeks, and what I'm guessing what he's going to anticipate is a good run game.
Yep.
And he's going to anticipate higher execution on both sides of the ball for our team. And this is Kirk's vision, is these 4 games and playing our best football right now.
Well, we've complained a lot about having a light playbook. Mm-hmm. I think actually Hawkeye game film, I think it was him or his analytics. Broke down how we actually have a fairly good yards per play in the first 2 possessions of the game.
Mm-hmm.
That also might be when defenses allow you to kind of play your system out. They're playing more passive because they don't want to give up an early play, and they also want to see what you're doing well.
Right. They're
So
not
we
going to
can't
make their
completely
adjustments.
rely on this, but that's still, it goes into the same idea we're talking about, where Iowa doesn't spend a lot of time in install. And what we mean by install is you install a certain amount of plays every week. And if you've watched Iowa football for the past 20 years, we're usually running somewhere between 12 and 15 plays a game. Occasionally, you'll see us enter a larger phase, but
outside your base,
outside
like
your
12
base.
to 15 scripted plays.
Scripted
it feels
plays.
like,
it's still not even been that much
Right.
the past couple games.
There's like 8 sometimes.
Yeah, especially since Deacon's taken over, it's a really small amount. But if you build gradually throughout the season, then by the time you get into these later November games, especially coming off a bye week, you can have essentially what most teams would be developed by about week 3 or 4. So now you're looking at a team that's been practicing the fundamentals, executing the small things well, with an ability to counter teams.
Our playbook is finally equal with these other teams.
Yeah,
It feels like.
it should be.
Yeah. And another thing we've noticed, especially post bye week in these last 4 games, this is when the true freshmen and the redshirt freshmen that haven't seen the field yet, you expect them to kind of pop.
Yeah.
Even going back to Sam Laporta in 2019 against Northwestern, it was kind of his coming out party was that game.
Yeah.
And then he held that starting position for the rest of the year. I don't really actually see any offensive players that fit that mold or other than Brian Allen.
Maybe
I think,
Bowie. He's been traveling as a receiver.
right. I think Bowie would make sense on offense. And I think Brian Allen on defense.
Brian Allen on defense is the guy I expect to start playing.
Right.
We've had pretty lackluster DM play. You essentially, this is the moment where Kirk will usually kind of flip the script on the guys who have earned their stay. So if we have upperclassmen who aren't playing well, this will be the time where Kirk's like, okay, it's time for
We're moving on.
We're moving on.
Yeah.
We're going to start developing for the next year. At DN, I like these guys. Evans is playing with a lingering injury. I think Craig's been probably dealing with something he hasn't played as well as he usually does. Herkett and Llewellyn have had make or miss years.
Yeah.
I think it's time to give Brian Allen
An opportunity. We haven't had a true pass rusher that can generate, consistent wins.
And what we've seen from him in small portions, granted, is usually against second team left tackles. But when you completely physically dominate a man who's 300 pounds, it pops on the screen.
Pretty obviously, yeah. And it's just because he has a superior ability.
Yeah.
His makeup is he can make the plays he has to.
Yeah.
And I was desperate in need of that play. So I think if you can predict one guy, most likely would be him. But I think
Because there really isn't any other holes there.
No, it's kind of odd. Usually a freshman class produces at least 2 to 3 contributors. This year there's
We don't really
been-
need one running back.
Right.
You got you're 3 deep there. I think we've talked about receiver, but I can't think of any receiver. I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't seen this 4-star
Yeah,
receiver
I think
play.
Moda was kind of surprising that we didn't see him in any packages, but
Yeah.
that was kind of our takeaway.
Caleb
from,
Brown was. Maybe Caleb Brown finally jumps into.
I didn't want to do the bring him up again because I've written him off, but it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like if there was a moment post bye week, like
haven't got any
we've
production
heard-
out of Reganey. Reganey should just be buried 6 feet deep at this point.
Yeah. But if there was a moment for him,
Yeah.
and they keep on preaching that he needs to get to the same level as Vines and Reganey, post bye week, last 4 games of the season is when if he doesn't make it now, if this is not the jump to put him into getting a good amount of touches and snaps, it's not going to happen this season.
Well, I think that'd be a good transition into what we expect to see from the offense against their defense.
Yeah.
So Northwestern runs a lot of just basically a shell cover 4 look, off corners, 2 high safeties. Occasionally they'll probably roll against us a little bit more than they usually do.
Yeah.
But they are very passive set offense. Defense. They're going to make you earn it, and they're really trying to position them well for a red zone defense. What we've seen from Iowa teams in the past, especially even last year with Petrus played his best game of the year because he was able to take advantage of off coverage on the outside. And that's essentially where our passing game is designed to thrive. Maybe we see a little bit better, more effective passing game because they're just not going to force the issue out there.
You can go the other way where they have that 9-yard cushion and they don't trust the receivers to run by them at that point.
They sit
and
down
they're going to be able to put their foot in the ground and come upfield. It is it's essentially Kirk's or Parker's defense from
2014.
Yeah, the DNs are 290 pounds. It looks like 275 at least, and they're really big bodies.
Yep.
The linebackers are built big. They play 4-3 consistently if you put on 2 tight ends on the field.
Yep.
Their safeties and corners are big. Like, they basically play Iowa defense.
Yep.
They're backing up. They're playing zone 90% of the time.
They haven't really slimmed down. Iowa's,
Right.
that's kind of been our
slimmed
evolution
down.
is we've countered to now be able to play spread teams better, and they haven't.
Right. They'll do the same things Iowa will do. Iowa kind of adopted that Raider package in 2015. Northwestern has their own version of that where they go 3 defensive linemen. They'll bring in more pass rushers on 3rd and long, as well as, like we mentioned, they play zone a lot. When it's over 3rd and 8 or longer, they'll go man-to-man. So it's essentially like exactly how
Carbon
Iowa
copy.
approaches defense. And their defense also plays to the red zone, and it plays well in the red zone.
Plays really well in the red zone.
You see Penn State, Minnesota, any game they played this season,
Maryland-
once they can put
Maryland's
their biggest
sold out.
bodies, they got some real true DNs they can throw out there. They can put 6 real big D linemen out there,
Yep.
and they all play it perfectly. They all lock out well. Iowa's going to have to kind of take some shots around the 20s to try to score because getting down in the red zone against this team,
Not gonna run
they're
it
going
in.
to feel comfortable.
Yep.
And that's where they kind of want to put you into that box. So it's going to be a really interesting game how Iowa can play it.
I do think we're going to see the jet sweep come back. That's been kind of a buried aspect of our offense for, I think, since week 2. I don't know if we actually even ran one against Iowa State. I think we just ran one against Utah State.
No
maybe,
Iowa State.
Maybe one after that. I think we'll see the reverse game come back. When you have corners playing off and D gap is available, we're gonna jump at the opportunity to stay.
And it's
on
a slow
schedule.
DN too. So the
Yeah.
guy's, he's a lumber.
Yep.
He's not going to jump out
If
and
you
grab
leave
your guy.
him, he's likely not going to make the play on
Right.
what will be Wetjen or Caleb Brown in that stead.
Yeah.
So I think we'll see Wetjen or Caleb Brown get involved in that area.
I anticipate outside zone to be a big part of the game
Screen
plan.
game too, probably with slower D linemen,
Right.
a lot more zone.
Yeah. I think the outside, generally why I always struggled to run the ball in the past 5 years is because DNs have been changed from these 290-pound bodies to 275-pound bodies to 250-pound dynamic athletes. And then you have a disadvantage for your tackles to have one-on-one blocks.
Yep.
But now since, it's a 290-pound D end and he's not the mobile guy that's going to be diving under you or, getting over the top of you easily through slants or just through his own movement, this is when you can actually take advantage of outside zone.
Yeah.
And, this very old offense line at this point.
Yeah.
You're 9 games into the season. You expect outside zone to have some success in this game. If it doesn't, it's going to be a long struggle.
Yeah. And also, I think we see the return of the boot pass.
Yeah.
If you're allowing for us to operate in the flats effectively, you're going to see more boot action. You're going to see more routes to the flats. You're going to see Caleb Johnson on that quick arrow to the flat off of play action. I think it's nice playing a team like this when you are in such a struggling zone because you're going to at least be able to stay on schedule more often than not. They're not going to force your issue as much. I think we will see a more successful Iowa offense, whether it results in touchdowns or not. I think we might just be settling for a lot of field goals. But I think that will be better.
It's an important game for Brian because he lost his way last game. He fell in love with the pass and he never should have. We brought that up in the last pod.
It's difficult to look back at the stats and be like, oh, he felt like he should have stuck with the run. We ran for a yard.
Yeah, but you had some. I can remember plays where we were 2nd and 6, and we just go in a shotgun and throw it. It's like why?
Yeah.
Like it's not that the run game is good.
Yeah.
It's not that it's like dominant.
Yeah.
It's that the pass game can hurt you more.
Well, and also, and it could have gotten better
Right.
if drives were sustained.
You in the 4th quarter of the Wisconsin game, you had the body blows in the system.
Yep.
That's why the run game worked on that critical drive.
Yep.
In Minnesota, you threw so much in that first half, and you didn't sustain drives early in the second half. The 4th quarter wasn't the time to run the ball because they were fresh as hell. They played like 40 snaps in like 2 hours, and the run game will struggle because these guys are built big.
Yeah.
The linebackers are actually very good players. Their safeties tackle well. They'll be flying up. There's not concern about the receivers, but you're playing a 4th quarter game the rest of the season.
Yeah.
You're not going to win a game by 2 scores. I almost can guarantee it.
Unless there's multiple turnovers. Yeah.
So play for the 4th quarter. Don't be, if we go back
Don't be short-sighted.
2nd and 6 and we just go into a 11 personnel and throw a hitch route or a slant or an out route to Reganey or our tight ends, you're just kind of missing an opportunity to pound the ball and, weaken up that defense.
Yeah.
And if you broke down the personnel, like of the passing game, tight ends, receivers, Deacon, compared to the 3 guys you give the ball in the running game and the offensive line,
Yeah.
that's your best 8 players. So give them the opportunity to make plays. Maybe make it in the screen game. Make it, in the short passing game to running backs. But Brian needs to highlight the actual guys who compete in the Power 5 level. And that's our running backs and our line.
Yep.
and sometimes the tight ends. But dropping back and throwing a pass to a receiver at this point it's almost a wasted down.
Yeah.
Like of what the full scope of what these games are going to be like. So I want Brian to stay patient with the run game. Don't overthink it. Keep pounding it. Find different creative ways to run it, but run the ball.
Yeah.
I want to see 40 plus attempts every game.
Even if you're going to have a lack of success in the run game early,
Yep.
that beats being passive with a throw and not taking the defensive line's legs away from them. Because anyone who's played football, if a team is going to consistently run at you for 3 quarters, that is an entirely different feeling in the fourth quarter with how much resistance you can put up in comparison to a team that's came out and thrown the ball 35 times.
You knew what it takes to stop every run.
Yeah.
Like stopping a run is not some simple.
It's emotional.
It's not a simple aspect of the game. It's a physical, violent aspect of the game.
Yeah.
And before a play starts, when you're in the fourth quarter, you are either thinking, I hope they throw it.
Yeah.
Or I hope they run it. Like no one thinks I hope they run it.
Yeah.
Like in the fourth quarter.
Please give us a playoff massive death.
My head is like ringing at this point. I don't want to do it one more time.
Yeah.
And I just think I want to see 40 to 45 runs every game. That's the plan going forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have to give him some credence for last game because Minnesota was just so keyed in on the run. The safeties were basically playing like the pass game didn't exist.
Yeah.
You have 2 high safeties flowing a C gap with no recourse at all. It is difficult to envision how that run game was ever going to develop.
Right. But then throw to the running backs.
Yeah. Yeah. It should have just been a short passing game. I for the life of me, I could not understand why we went to the 10-yard curl and 10-yard outs. That just, our receivers are having difficult times catching Deacon's balls. He's off schedule. You then put him in 2 times where he was holding the ball for too long and he had 2 fumbles. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense.
Hey, you're below 40% completion percentage.
Yeah, especially when you're playing an inept offense on the other side that's not succeeding against you unless it's like,
Play for the one possession.
Yeah.
Yeah. The killer one.
Yeah.
We are happy to announce a new sponsor for the ANF Podcast. The ANF Podcast is sponsored by Eye Surgeons Associates, proudly serving Eastern Iowa and Western Illinois for all your eye care needs for over 40 years.
Time to move on to offense versus defense.
Yep. Hard to judge their, I don't know. I feel like their QB is comparable to past guys we've seen.
I'd say it's Hudson Card or Becht. Are the 2 guys I'd.
Kind of like a blend of them.
Yeah.
He's a bigger body than both, so he can take some more punishment. Though
He doesn't have as big of an arm as Hudson, but I would say it's more comparable to Becht, but he's got good accuracy. He doesn't really zip the ball, which that can, against Iowa, the QBs we've seen have a lot of success can really zip it. If you're going to let our cornerbacks come late to a pass and break it up, that's usually where we have issues.
Right.
It's also going to lend us to likely not respecting your deep ball because we feel like we can even catch up to a guy who gets behind us. I know the receivers have had some success against some teams. I just don't see these guys beating Jamari and Cooper consistently. I think we're going to see the same thing where they go after Jamari a ton.
Yeah.
But I think that still favors our matchup. What I do anticipate a ton is essentially employing a lot of what we saw from Michigan State, where it's short passing game to the flats, just trying to stay on schedule, using the QB read well. But I think the reason why we have a 29-point under is because Northwestern's been in high-scoring games pretty much all year. It's because Northwestern's going to be very keen on trying to possess the ball in this game. And I think we're going to allow that to a certain extent too, because they have at least some explosive ability in the passing game.
Yeah.
As I say.
I think their offensive game plan is going to be a blend of what we saw, like you mentioned, Michigan State and Minnesota.
Yeah.
I think Michigan State, you actually see with Sullivan, they'll run them in power sets. So look for them to run QB power or QB read in 3rd and 5 and unders, trying to catch us off, guard on a 3rd and long essentially.
Yep.
And then using them in 3rd and short situations because he's a big body. And just how Kim, kind of beat us a few times, like 2 or 3 times with that type of QB power in those plays.
Yeah.
We'll see that. We're going to see, I think Minnesota schemed us up the best of anybody so far in terms of attacking our corners.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing Northwestern will do the same where they're going to go heavy sets and play a one-on-one game.
I don't see that's a very Minnesota thing already though. I've seen them utilize that against Purdue on years past where they'll go, 9-man protection or 8-man protection.
Yeah.
I don't know if Northwestern will do that. I think that copycat league isn't that common in college football. I think they're going to believe more in their schemes. I They're going to see a lot more flood concepts, and that's just going to lead to a lot of checkdowns. Honestly, I think that we're going to handle this team pretty well because I think they're going to have to, just by alignment, the way Iowa lines up, you're basically begging teams to run. And a team that's kind of scared of the moment, isn't, especially a team that realizes they are not playing that good of an offense on the other side, they're going to put field position at a premium. It's not going to be scoring points and maybe giving up the strip sack or giving up the pick.
Yeah.
It's going to be, okay, let's get to the 50 and punt this deep and let their inept offense operate against us. So I think what we're going to see is them actually be very passive against us as well.
Yeah. I think another kind of a gadget guy that we actually should be employing ourselves, like how we have Caleb Brown and they have AJ Henning, almost identical type of recruits. We're top 100 recruits. He went to Michigan. Brown went to Ohio State. Henning's been completely incorporated in the Northwestern offense. And actually now he's the focal point of anything they do that's gadget-wise.
Yeah.
Bubble screens, jet sweeps.
Reverses.
Any deep shots going to Henning. And he can actually make Iowa pay.
Yeah.
He's a real athlete. And we always kind of point out who's a deep shot guy. It's going to be Henning versus Jamari.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the play that I know it's Minnesota dictated, that kind of heavy set 2-band game. But Northwestern against Nebraska, who they probably kind of compare Iowa's defense to, really struggled. Like they were not on their normal basis of possessing and running the ball at all. Why don't you embrace this new attack that Minnesota had? We're putting our corners on islands, like 2 yards and having to contain essentially 50% of the field, to 80% of the field at some points. You have to attack that.
Yeah.
And Minnesota showed that these guys aren't they're great. Cooper still got beat like 3 times. Jamari got beat a lot.
Yeah.
If we're going to continue to play 2 yards, like Sullivan's a good QB and they have good receivers, they're playable receivers. Like Henning's the only one that's going to have a shot to make the NFL. But I have a hard time believing that's not going to be kind of the game plan, is to attack that, because nothing else is really working against Iowa.
Yeah.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Is that linebackers are playing really good right now. D-line's playing very well. The pass rush isn't there, so you're going to have a lot of time.
I think you're going to see a lot of crow routes. Yeah. I think that will be how they attack. 'Cause I doubt they use the looping.
Well, that's what they would. Minnesota did the curl route too.
Yeah, the curl route. I mean, everyone utilizes that.
Yeah,
it's just, again, it's a throw that we saw Ethan even struggle with eventually. Just it's an odd throw. You're trying to put it on the line. It's from some distance too, so you have to put pace on it, so you can't let the guy get back into the play. I'm sure it's a play that when you're practicing, it's what we talk about with Deacon. It's like, I'm sure in practice Deacon can hit that throw every time.
Right.
But when there's stress involved with it, there's a little bit of pressure.
Yeah.
There's the moment, it's 3rd and 8 in a giant moment of the game. That ball, sometimes you can get a little low on you. You can mess up your form. You can mess up whatever. And that's how this game's going to come down to. Can Northwestern execute at a high level in the passing game? And if they do, we're likely going to lose the game.
Yeah.
If they don't, then it's just difficult to imagine a life where Iowa scores more than 13 points in this game.
Yeah.
Against a bad Northwestern defense.
It's actually pretty good. Like, it's going to look good against us.
Yeah, it will.
Like,
what they can do well.
Right. We play right into their hands.
Yeah.
Like, they're built big up front. We're trying to run the ball. They have safety second tackle. It's going to. Maryland looked good against them, and they made,
Maryland made a lot of plays, though.
Right. Yeah. But also it's because they're throwing the ball. They have real receivers, and, Talia can make plays when he's not turning the ball over.
Yeah.
And we just can't push that button. Yeah. And we're kind of running right into their teeth.
Well, this is what Kyle and I have talked about a lot this past week is, almost every other program at this point would have given the backup QB an opportunity. Labus feels like even a better option this week than ever. Right. You're going to be playing a team with off coverage where D gaps and C gaps can be theirs for the taking. If you can run a read option game and just spread them out and run your QB 10 to 15 times. Yeah. Essentially, as you said, the only success Nebraska's really had operating has been the QB run game.
Right.
You're not throwing the ball well. You're at sub 40% completion percentage. Yeah. Maybe that might be the worst in college football history in QB. Why not add a small dimension to the game?
Right.
And then, Labus wasn't an inaccurate QB. He lacks arm strength. So I get it. You have to put the curl route and that route on the shelf. Yeah. But then just get them on the move. Run those 5-yard outs you like to run.
Yeah.
Run.
Be a coach.
Run slants. Yeah.
Be
competitive.
Be a play caller.
Yeah. Trust in your play calling. Trust in your design.
Right.
And you don't even necessarily need to have him play a full game. Just have 2 schemed up drives where you can empty the bag on this other look rather than just kind of beating your head against the wall with a look at a team that's not working.
And you said it perfectly, beating your head against the wall.
Yeah.
Like Nebraska and Northwestern, they were beating their head against the wall early in the season. Ben Bryant was not the athlete that Sullivan is.
Yeah.
He's a bigger arm guy. Like, that sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Sims, like, if you put Harburg and Sims on the field in a practice field at the same time, those balls that they're throwing are night and day.
Yeah.
But they made competitive decisions that is not decided in warm-ups,
Yeah.
not decided on a practice field. Who can just go get first downs and win a game? Like,
Yeah.
Northwestern and Nebraska both made those decisions. They're technically the worst QB.
Yeah.
They have worse arms, but they're accurate. They throw a catchable ball, and they have legs. That sounds the exact situation I was in, and it was in last year as well.
Yeah.
With Padilla and Petrus. But Kirk and Brian just go back to wanting a full playbook.
Yeah.
They want the entire myriad of choices.
I think at the end of the day, they're just obsessed with wide side of the field throws.
Right.
They're obsessed with the
Not throwing pick sixes.
They're not throwing pick sixes, and just the aspect of you can take what the team's giving you.
Mm-hmm.
You can eliminate the issue of having to throw over the middle.
Yeah.
But
it's a made in a vacuum.
it's two offensive linemen thinking about how they want to throw the ball.
Right.
Like, let's not take a chance here. Let's try and just be really good around the ball.
Right.
It's like eventually you have to be competitive with your offense.
Mm-hmm.
That's not just competitive with your recruiting, with how you approach this game, like conservatives and scheme.
Competitive with your personnel choices. Yeah.
And just competitive with like scheme. You have to just design plays that are going to work.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just rely on running inside zone with a lead and say we're going to be tougher.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're playing another college football team.
Yeah.
They're not going to just roll over on you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just been the indictment of Iowa football for essentially since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's so odd because like 2019, our issue was we were throwing the ball too much.
Yep.
Early 2020, we were throwing the ball too much.
Yep.
And I think since we went on that 6-game win streak or 12-game win streak between 2020 and 2021, and it was essentially inside zone, outside zone lead,
Yep.
Kirk just cannot get out of that mold. He says,
Mm-hmm.
okay, this is actually how this team's going to win.
Right.
We're not going to be a chuck it around team. And unintentionally, he has now created the worst offense in the world because now we're unable to recruit receivers.
Yep.
They have no confidence to start with.
Yeah.
And
Hey, you watch Vines and Reganey and Anderson move around the field after plays.
well, they drop a pass and it looks like their life just ended.
Yeah. They're like not even like mad.
Yeah.
There's not like frustration. There's like, we always say like receivers have to be riding lightning.
Yeah.
Like it's the most difficult position in the entire, in the sport
Yeah.
is to make those plays.
Yeah.
You have to be flowing with confidence. And now those guys are coming in with like, I've made like 2 plays all year, maybe
Yeah.
1. And that's just not a headspace you want to be in.
Oh, let's get to predictions, I think.
Yeah.
I think it's going to come down to turnovers. I
Really?
well, I can't design in my brain how we run the ball on this team.
Yeah.
Effectively. I don't see them being a touchdown team against us. I said this at the beginning of the season. I was like, there's going to be about 9 teams this year that might not score a touchdown, or if they do, it's going to be late.
Yeah.
It's the same
Here
thing.
we are
They're
again.
not going to
Yeah.
run the ball in the red zone.
Yeah.
And our defensive secondary is playing so well, and teams are so reluctant to test them down there that I think I'm going to say 13-9. I think we either get
I was actually thinking
punt return,
Yeah.
kick return, fumble, pick 6. We get a touchdown through that, kick 2 field goals, and they kick 3.
Yeah. I was going to say the same score, so I'll go
Yeah.
with 13-9 as
Yeah.
well. Do some picks.
I was going to take the under 29.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. You
Yeah.
have to.
I'll take Northwestern plus 5.
It's +6.
I'll take Northwestern plus 6 then.
I'm going to do the under Iowa versus
I'll
Northwestern.
win one of those for sure then.
Yeah. Iowa under 29.5. It's up to 30.5. I'm going to take it at 29.5.
Yeah.
If it's the lowest under of all time, you have to take it up.
Yeah.
And I'm going to take it as
It's
original.
a disrespectful, like,
yeah.
can't believe it.
Ridiculous number.
It means it's like there could not, like they think there's not going to be a touchdown then.
Yeah. And then I'm going to do Nebraska -3.5 versus Michigan State. At Michigan State.
At Michigan State?
Yeah. I just watched that Michigan State offense pretend for 3 hours this weekend.
Yeah, but they're going to go with that Levitt guy now.
That's fine.
He looked actually pretty decent. If they would have played him the whole game, they would have won.
I don't think so.
He was actually pretty decent.
He's a good athlete.
Yeah, good athlete.
That's it, though.
But yeah, I'll just stick with the 2 then. I'll go Northwestern plus 6 and then under 29.5.
Awesome.
I'll take the under 30.
Yeah.
I'll be
All
greedy.
right, I'll do it too.
Yeah. All right. Go Hawks.